Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1095 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. This chapter is why I love One Piece. Straight up, guys. I understand that people have different opinions, different experiences. There's different things that we all like. This is what I like. You begin with a lot of drama, tension, and excitement. You flip over to an incredibly emotional flashback. This flashback then leads to a reveal that we have been waiting on for hundreds of chapters now, and I couldn't be any more excited for in God Valley. Throughout the whole chapter is little tiny details which you can spend entire videos talking about, speculating about, discussing, being excited about. When it gets to the point that it's almost overwhelming is like when Oda is really cooking. But of course the end matters too, and Oda leaves us with a page this week, which is just like the cherry on top. And he's like, screw it, let's reintroduce and give a backstory for one of the most popular characters in the entire series. It's just sheesh. But when I don't know exactly where to start, let's just start from the beginning. And this week it might be the freaking title. A world where you're better off dead. Sometimes I talk about politically related things on this channel, and almost every time it's probably a bad decision. Certainly I overthink it enough that it becomes a bad decision, but the title of today's chapter, relating it to world events, I don't know, that alone made me feel something. And I just wanted to say that. But anyway, if you had any questions that Saturn was actually strong, I think that the beginning of this chapter gave you an answer. As the vast majority of us believe following the last chapter, Bonnie stabbing Saturn amounted to nothing. Oda is literally not holding back, giving Saturn as many incredibly powerful abilities as he can possibly imagine. And it starts with healing. Oda must be having a blast right now, seriously. We saw the last chapter, Saturn exploding people's heads. Well, he attempted the same ability on Sanji, and it worked enough for me to totally fear this ability too. It honestly appears to me like the final form of Death Wink. First off, Saturn doesn't need to wink, and second off, there's no chance of dodging it, so far as I know. But wait, there's more. Saturn has the ability to essentially lock people in place. The Strats are attempting to do things, trying to help, trying to fight something, and they say it's like they're being pinned down. I honest to God would have thought all of this was hockey, if not for a little bit of help from Oda. I love that he slid that in the chapter. If it's not technology, it must be a devil fruit. So I'm assuming that everything that we've just talked about is part of Saturn's devil fruit abilities, making this fruit among the most broken. I had really high expectations for the Gorsei. I don't want you guys to think otherwise. But, we've seen other mythical zones in the story like Orochi's. I think Orochi's fruit is very strong, gives a really powerful magical ability. This one, however, shits all over it. And it kind of recontextualized something for me. Obviously, Saturn is an awakened mythical zone. And I thought to myself, we've seen mythical zones, but aside from Luffy, have we seen any of them awakened? How much of a game changer is that? Honestly, my mind is kind of blown. I already thought that mythical zones were the strongest kind of fruit that exists. I personally would put them above Lokia's. The passive boost to physical stats associated with zones is perfect for in-game One Piece. We've seen sort of the training arcs of characters like Aokiji or Garp, right? And they follow the same training regimen, and because of this work, Aokiji is physically a boss, and we know that. But it's just intuitive to me that somebody with a mythical zone or a zone period would just have slightly higher potential, no matter how hard anybody ever worked. But to add on to that, you get Paramecia-like magical abilities as well, sometimes many of them. So like I said, I already thought the mythical zones were the best. And that was before I realized what Oda might do with them once they are awakened. But maybe I should tap the brakes at least a little bit here. It could just be Saturn's devil fruit, because there's some controversy surrounding Kaido, whether or not he awakened. Certainly, there's some change in Kaido's appearances during the fight. It's not outright stated, it isn't highlighted in any way, but we see like a normal hybrid form, and then we see a variation where Kaido's eyebrows change, his nose shape changes, and otherwise isn't given any extra abilities that we're aware of, aside from possibly an increase in strength. So it's possible Kaido had an awakening, I'm saying. And he got totally shafted on all this cool shit that Saturn is doing. As an aside, did anyone else think about Sabo in this chapter? And just how absurd it was that he was able to escape not just Saturn, but literally everybody else. That is an incredible flex. I almost cannot imagine it. But anyway, let's not get lost in the hype. You guys already know that JB is a pretty regular contrarian. Saturn's devil fruit is just godly. But I definitely think that he's going to lose here, which means I definitely think that he is beatable. And if I were to attribute a reason for this, before it actually happens, I would say that it's very likely at this point that Saturn relies too heavily on his fruit's abilities. Because honestly, why would you need to do anything else other than use the fruit in 99.999% of all battles you would ever have? Bro can sit there and win against fighters of Sanji's caliber. That is absurd. Again, as far as I can gather, he hasn't even needed to use any form of haki yet. So yeah, I know power scaling can get a bit tiresome, but of course the question with Saturn is just how strong is he? Is he a Yonko level? Could Saturn be the leader of one of the most powerful pirate crews in the New World, establish a little zone for himself? And I do think that this is still debatable. If only it's very well telegraphed that a person's will counteracts the abilities of his devil fruit. We see a difference between how Saturn's abilities affect those that are weaker and those that are stronger. It still affects Sanji, which is incredible. But Sanji does not have the greatest will in the story. No offense. So as sort of an absurd or an exaggerated example, put someone like Gold Roger against Saturn. I think that Saturn's abilities would have zero effect on him. Now, of course, the line of differentiation matters. Gold Roger is an incredible extreme. Would this same concept apply to Luffy? If Luffy were at full strength against Saturn right now, would Saturn's ability have zero effect on him? My opinion is yes. No effect. But you know, we have to see it for sure before we know. But assuming all this to be true, a fight with Saturn becomes approachable and less complex. Saturn has some durability that's obvious because he has an ability to heal, plus what is naturally granted by being a zone. But how does he physically match up with a character like Luffy right now? Strength, speed, haki. It seems to me that we would need to know this in order to accurately power scale him. And if he's too reliant on his fruit, you could imagine then that he might be disadvantaged in these categories. But yeah, we're not living in the future right now, obviously. There are chapters to come, we'll learn things. But there's a fair argument to be made that it doesn't make too much sense that Saturn isn't a top tier in all forms of haki, just because, look, we see Saturn later in this chapter, and it appears as if Saturn is also immortal. 40 years ago, he looks exactly the same. But it just seems crazy to me, the idea that Saturn might lose here if he really is that strong. I mean, we're talking about a fight that should be of the level of Luffy and Kaido at least, if that's the kind of fighter that he is. There's just no way in my mind that Luffy is ready for something of that level currently. But yeah, just as some context, I've just been under the impression something is going to happen to Saturn in this arc. He's gonna lose. If for no other reason, this is the Egghead incident. This is a big world event, and I don't see this being from the context of the world government defeating the Straw Hats. I feel like the world government has to take an L. So something involving Saturn would appear like a natural target. But if he's too strong, maybe not. But anyway, guys, I'm also working on a theory regarding Saturn's powers that I think is going to be incredibly mind-blowing, so I'm going to avoid a lot of the details here. But I do think that there may be a cheeky way to defeat Saturn that the community may not be prepared for. Essentially, Blackbeard has an incredible advantage over Saturn that he may be able to exploit. But yeah, it's crazy. I'm basically praying that Blackbeard is actually here. It's not just Blackbeard Pirates, Blackbeard himself, so that he can help the Straw Hats, because I really feel like they need it. But yeah, the whole first half of this chapter was incredible. Every moment. Seeing Sanji so helpless was so incredibly powerful, even though he wanted to save a girl. Literally nothing speaks for itself more than Sanji getting stonewalled from saving a pretty girl. Frankie also reminded me why he's one of my favorite Strats. I mean, dude, Frankie is so cool. Luffy was going to die. But even more than that, I mean, that Chad energy of knowing that there's a person here that you can't fight at all. You're basically on death's doorstep. And Frankie's like, challenge accepted. Bro, he's actually hyped. He's low-key like, we made it. The real bad guys are after us. And even getting to know Saturn in the chapter was itself an experience. The dude is totally evil. He kills innocents like it's breathing. But there's also this cold, rational intrigue about those that attempt to defy him. You stabbed me. Interesting decision. Let's see if it pays off for you. You guys know what I'm saying? I'm here for it. I hope that Oda maintains this sort of energy with all of the Gorosei. Basically, I hope that all the Gorosei are similarly cool but different. Because Saturn is the Minister of Defense and of Science, and the perspective that I got from Saturn in the chapter is like, this is an experiment, you know? He's observing what is taking place and jotting down notes. So while it feels like all the Gorosei should be like this, I want to see how Oda individually characterizes them. But yeah, this is one of those beautiful moments in One Piece where, like, the current events that are taking place, this battle couldn't be any more hype. I couldn't be any more excited for it. But we also cut to a flashback after this, and I want more of the flashback too. There's literally, Oda can do no wrong. Every little thing is just working. But I suppose while we're here, right, the question is Bonnie, what happens to her? How does she get saved? Luffy, does he return to the fight or not? Blackbeard or the Blackbeard Pirates, what do they do? Vegapunk, what does he do? And I think Kizaru. Saturn acknowledged what I think most of us were thinking, which is that Kizaru is nerfed in this arc, obviously. He is not fighting at full strength because he's not fighting for what he wants. That is why the fast man is being described as slow. So you gotta keep this in mind with pretty much anything that happens with Kizaru. I think the Gear 5th Luffy is incredibly strong. I think that Kizaru is badly damaged. But also, if the context were different, I think Kizaru would also already be up. He has the potential within him, but he's not feeling any of this. Once again, I'll reiterate, Oda is laying enough clues for Kizaru to eventually do something against Saturn and the government. Will he? Won't he? We'll see, but certainly the pieces are there. But regarding Vegapunk, I'm just totally convinced that Stella Vegapunk dies very soon. Basically, once we get out of the flashback. I made a video the other day that Egghead has already been spoiled. I'll go ahead and link it in the description, but that video is basically a comparison of how Egghead is paralleled with Sabaody, and we compare Vegapunk to Hachi. After Hachi gets shot, he cries in regret for everything that he feels like he's responsible for. And I really got the impression that Oda is setting something up with this through Saturn. Saturn says, "I'm grateful for all that you have accomplished for the Navy during your tenure. Now, which one of you is to die first? Tell me the cruelest order possible. I want you to die cursing yourself for daring to cross the world's government." So I'd guess the two characters that would matter most to Vegapunk are Jewelry Bonnie and Sentomaru. It is very possible that Saturn kills both or one of these characters. Personally, I think Bonnie survives, but we'll see. But it's setting up Vegapunk getting incredibly emotional. But he's definitely not going to curse having betrayed the world government. He's going to curse having ever served them. And I already expect this moment to hit like a truck. But yeah, I think it's time that we get into the flashback. Bonnie tells Saturn, "You killed my father." And Saturn says, you're talking about Kuma. He was born to be a slave, a descendant of people who committed a grave sin against the world, a survivor of the now extinct Buccaneer race. So we finally have the last race in the world of One Piece that Big Mom was unable to recruit onto her pirate crew. Buccaneers themselves seem to be a sort of connecting piece between giants and humans. So man, what do I say about this? I think, just contextually, like big picture One Piece world, it's very clear that in the past there was most likely many more races that we do not see today. I do not believe that Lunarians and Buccaneers are the only races that the world government has eradicated. Straight up, I had some bad takes in the past about the world government essentially aiming for some sort of peace. And that's not true anymore, because as Oda has introduced Imu and the Gorosei, it's very clear that they're angry people. They're harboring resentment and hatred for whatever occurred during the Void Century. In my mind, it's like one for one the circumstances of Ace, his execution and capture. Obviously, Ace was a famous pirate as well, but they treated him as if he bore the sins of his father. Because he was Gold D. Roger's son, that is why he was put up on a pedestal. Likewise, they seem to hold these grudges for these races that did something during the Void Century, and appear to view their eradication as a form of justice, a necessary punishment. So you can look at the Celestial Dragons, the Gorosei, and Imu in a very similar way to Hody Jones. If Hody ever became immortal and became the ruler of the world, humans would never be able to redeem themselves. His end goal would always be to eventually exterminate them all. But this also has me thinking about what exactly these races, the Buccaneer race, did to the Gorosei, did to the world government and the 20 Kings. What was the Void Century all about? So guys, just do yourself a favor and go watch. This feels like a major One Piece spoiler. Is it just me? I'll link it in the description, but I express my thoughts about the Void Century here. But the idea is that the world government, or the 20 Kings, were the revolutionary army of the Void Century. And they were the revolutionary army because they fought against an actual evil. The idea is essentially that we've gotten half of the story and a lot of the context for why the world government and the Gorosei are the way that they are is not revealed. but sometime in the past, in my opinion, likely when the Lunarians ruled as gods over the world, non-human races were treated as superior to humans. Humans were lowest on the totem pole because they were the weakest. So the entire story of One Piece is a large-scale variation of Fishman Island versus Arlong Park. In Arlong Park, we couldn't understand why Arlong treated the villagers of Kokoyashi and Nami the way that he did. Then in Fishman Island, you're like, oh, it's an inescapable cycle of hatred and vengeance, destined to continue forever until one side or the other is exterminated, which appears to be the Gorsei's goal, ending the cycle in their own way, which I suppose makes their path to peace genocide. Again, as an aside, guys, trying and failing to avoid being political, I just think that this is relevant to current world events. But I'll just leave it there. In my opinion, this was the Buccaneers' crime. In fact, this is most of the strong races in the One Piece world's crime against humans. At one point in the distant past, humans were the ones being exterminated and enslaved. The Gorosei and Imu for sure still bear this grudge. They have not forgotten. And it recontextualizes some things that we learned about the Fishmen. The Gorosei said sometime in the past that they wanted the Fishmen to join in the reverie and be a part of the world government, but now it's just insanely clear to me that this is just a trap. They want to get the Fishmen out of hiding so that their fate can mirror the Buccaneers. But yeah, go ahead and watch the theory video I linked. There I try to make sense of everything that we know and put the puzzle pieces in their place as best as I can, including what exactly occurred during the Void Century, Joy Boy's role in all of these things. Did my best. But as of this chapter, that theory still feels on point. Longtime viewers will know that I'm pretty much the guy that put my balls against the wall that Joy Boy and the Ancient Kingdom were a kingdom of pirates. Believe it or not, but there was a time when that was not a meta theory. And so I just also want to mention that Buccaneers were the precursor of pirates. Buccaneers as in the group from real world history. So I would also look for connections potentially between the race of Buccaneers and sailing, piracy. And there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that the Buccaneers were friends with Joy Boy, just like all of the other tribes of the One Piece world. But anyway, with this lingering question of just how many races have already been erased, Buccaneers just seem like a stepping stone between humans and giants. Are we missing kind of the missing links between all of the races? There are so many characters in One Piece that have very bizarre appearances. And I wonder just how many people have blood related to tribes that no longer exist. Either way, the beginning of this flashback, Kuma's story is heartbreaking. Truly. We've known about slaves, we've seen stories here or there, Boa Hancock and Fisher Tiger, but this was the most direct demonstration of it, and good God, some fates are worse than death. Now we're seeing the legend of Nika actually used in the story, how this figure represents hope for the hopeless. It's great. But then the father is killed because of this hope. All he wanted to do was give his son some joy, some strength, based on a fairy tale. The struggle is just so visceral. Anybody who tells you that overusing flashbacks is a bad thing, inherently, they're wrong. Doing flashbacks right is always a dub. Always. People just conflate experiences where it's not done right, and then apply it as an imaginary rule. But honest to God, Oda has never missed. As I said at the beginning of this chapter review, guys, these are the chapters that I live for, and sometimes it's just the choices that Oda makes. I love it when he's creative. We've obviously speculated a lot about God Valley, and there's 1,000 theories on the internet now that are all wrong. And I can sit here and tell you right now that I am glad that they're wrong, because what we actually got was surprising in the best way. God Valley isn't even a special island. It's not an ancient homeland of the celestial dragons. It's an island that they decided would become a hunting ground. I actually wonder whether Oda was inspired, at least in part, by The Promised Neverland, because that's what this is. I don't even think I can describe my feelings about this. There are so many things happening simultaneously that I'm enjoying. Part of it is even the hype of the celestial dragons themselves. We see St. Garling Figureland, who is the champion, or we know eventually becomes the champion of God Valley, so he wins this contest. But my imagination starts going. Garling looks like Shanks. I'm even more convinced that Garling is his father, although we'll see. But I imagine like a future Shanks and Doflamingo that are still a part of the world government, part of the Celestial Dragons, competing in these sorts of events. Where would they stack up? These stories, I don't know, man, it just opens the world in my mind. I almost want to write some fan fiction But I'm certain that this event, this hunt, which takes place every 3 years, is more important than it seems. It seems very arbitrary. It seems like just random destruction and death, and it's totally pointless flex of power. While I do think that that's true, I think that there's another secret that is sort of hidden. We'll discuss this in my next video that's coming out as well. Sorry to be a tease. I just want to convey that I think that this ritual actually serves a role for the greater plans of the Gorosei Emu. But yeah, guys, you read the chapter. I don't want to explain everything, but they're hunting the people, the native people of this land, which are humans, but they're also bringing slaves for entertainment as well, including Kuma as the last member of the Buccaneer race. They intend to kill him. And at the end of the chapter, we are introduced to other slaves, and Emporio Ivankov is such a great character. I know he's fictional, but his strength actively breaks me. I'm reminded when we're first introduced to him that he was in Impel Down, and bro, Impel Down did not matter to him. He made that place his Okama cave. He was literally just chilling. And now with this chapter, man, my respect, it was already high, but it is even higher. I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Always, in terms of my favorite characters in the story, Bon Clay was always higher than Ivankov. Now they are the same. This moment alone, he's gotta have Conqueror's Hockey. Being a slave, everything that they go through, and still being himself. Truly inspirational. Some people complain about the stereotypical depiction of a cross-dresser in the world of One Piece and that this is problematic. But I really think that anybody who says this just is not a fan of the story and has really no idea what's going on. Oda makes it clear that Ivankov's circumstances has made him into a stronger person. And maybe there's also like some subtle messaging that you might need a few screws loose in the right places in order to express yourself so honestly in a world which so obviously actively despises you. Anyway, man, I don't want to get preachy. I just want to convey how powerful Ivankov was to me in the chapter. But as with all things that I love, you get a little hint of mystery and expectation for the future. This is fuel for theories. We're basically seeing how the Revolutionary Army is being formed, right? Kuma is meeting Ivankov. We obviously know this becomes God Valley. Rocks will show up here. Eventually, Garp and Roger will fight them. But I'm just prepare yourselves, Dragon will be here. I 1,000,000% believe that. Whether it is as a citizen of this country, a Marine, or a member of Rox D. Zebek's pirate crew, as a slave, as a celestial dragon, whatever it might be, Dragon is here. And my personal guess would be as a Marine, because I think that at this time in the story, Dragon is 17 years old, correct me if I'm wrong. It seems old enough to be a Marine. But yeah, guys, here's my prediction. This is the event which changes Dragon's life forever and inspires the creation of the Revolutionary Army. I think that God Valley and the Celestial Dragons event is supposed to be secret. They are here, the Marines are not. However, Rox will show up, punch a Celestial Dragon, it will call a Marine Admiral, and this will lead the Marines here to be able to witness the true evil of the government. This is going to highly impact Dragon. He is not going to be able to unsee this. And I think that he's going to see his father, Garp, fight for the Celestial Dragons despite it. And I don't think that he's going to like that. Honestly, guys, prepare yourselves. I think Dragon is going to be inspired by, and kind of, in a way, look up to, try to mimic Rox D. Zebek. Honestly, they look so similar, I still like the idea that Dragon is actually Zebek's son, and Garp adopts him. But that is my 1B theory. I also think that many people in the community are going to have some thinking to do when they realize that Roger and Garp fought on this side of the Celestial Dragons to defeat Rox D. Zebek, despite the fact that clearly he is going to be the good guy in all of this. Evil Gold Roger theories are going to be coming hot and fast. But I think the context of all of this is that Zebek is going to go Scorched Earth and attempt to kill all of the Celestial Dragons that are there. And you're going to see Roger and Garp play a Shanks role, like Shanks in Marineford. He comes, the war's over. Put down your weapons, the battle has already decided. Something to that effect. But Rox is going to be unable to do this, and it's just one of those times where One Piece creates interesting feelings within you where you can potentially sympathize. Who are the heroes and who are the villains? The winners decide. But Oda's not done. We have another important slave character introduced named Jenny. And the community is kind of going wild, right? They're throwing out, you know it's legit when they're throwing out, this is Luffy's mom theories. I'm already speculating that Dragon is going to come here. This appears like the event which sparks the creation of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon at some point is supposed to have a son in Luffy, so he's gotta meet somebody at some point. I mean, it could be. And Jenny definitely looks derpy enough to be Luffy's mom, right? Luffy looks more like her than Dragon. I've had some discussion about this, and I think the most persuasive point against this being Luffy's mom is that, Oda stated that Luffy's mom isn't really important in the story, or that Dadan is Luffy's mom, and so because of that, we may never be introduced to her. That being said, I'm of the opinion a lot of people take these quotes and take them out of context. Dadan is absolutely Luffy's mother because she raised him. But that does not mean that we are never going to be introduced to Luffy's biological mother. People do the same shit with Oda when they're like, well, Oda said that the One Piece treasure is an actual treasure. He said it's a physical reward. And I'm over here wondering whether people actually read the interviews where these quotes came from, or if community is playing this gigantic game of telephone where you hear a thing from somebody else and then suddenly the truth is slightly different than what it started. Oda said the One Piece is not the friends they made along the way. It is an actual reward, but it does not mean that it has to be a physical reward or just a physical reward. Things like knowledge can be part of the One Piece, because knowledge is in fact a treasure, even if you can't necessarily touch it. Anyway, regarding Luffy's mother, Oda has never stated that he would never draw her and that she would never be introduced in the story. He's mainly stated his opinion that mothers are the antithesis of adventure. Essentially, mothers stop young boys from setting out. So Luffy needed to be separated from his mother in order to begin his adventure, and it's unlikely that she is going to play an active role in the story for present events. Using her in a flashback as a potential source of motivation for Dragon, however, I think is totally fair game. So sorry for getting sassy, I just wanted to make sure this is sad. You hear this a lot and it suddenly becomes a brick wall that you need to get through in order to speculate. But this will probably just go down as another time JB shot himself in the foot, because I don't actually believe that this is Luffy's mom. I want to argue for the possibility. We're playing devil's advocate. I really do think that it's more likely that Jenny is related to Bonnie, because based on the context of this chapter, it's just so obvious that Kuma is not Bonnie's father. It's stated that Kuma is of this unique Buccaneer tribe, and the genetics of that tribe are very strong, right? So you would just expect Bonnie to look different if Kuma was her biological father. Obviously, One Piece is wacky, the designs are wacky. This isn't necessarily proof, but it's persuasive enough for me. And as Bonnie is a highlighted character right now, to be introduced to the person that Kuma met that would be related to how he comes to adopt Bonnie, that's the kind of story that makes sense to me. But you guys know I do have a theory about Bonnie that's kind of wild. So I have other thoughts about her as well, and it's straight up, it's just a possibility that this is just a character exclusive to the flashback, and it'll just be important because she's going to die here. Jenny, I'm talking about. In many flashbacks, there's often a character that is exclusive to them, and usually these characters perform the role of dying tragically, in some way that really moves us. So that is a possibility, even if it's less intricate to the theory crafting world that I am a part of. But yeah, guys, I feel like I touched on everything. I might have missed something, it happens. But yeah, that's I guess my thoughts for the chapter. It was an incredible experience, man. There are certain chapters, I hope that when One Piece finishes, I'll be able to go back and point to the chapters that were the most incredible to experience live and share with you guys. And I think that this chapter might end up being on the list. It was really profound to me. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Share your thoughts. If you have the time, check out my book, The Booms. Volume 1, 2, and 3 are all out. And if you guys happen to read it, make sure you leave a review just to let other people know what you think about it. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad, and as always, guys, have a wonderful day.